places north and south of that. I've been asked to read an open letter that I read at the Arizona Board of Regents meeting a month plus ago, and I'm going to read that and then add a few things to be done, and we have some follow-up speakers here who are going to do a magnificent job highlighting many of the issues we're dealing with. Dear President Klein and fellow Regents, I write this letter in hope that the Arizona Board of Regents will request an independent review of the circumstances surrounding the termination of Dr. Sue Sisley by the University of Arizona. This country is losing 22 veterans per day to suicide. That is over 8,000 per year and over 16,000 deaths since late 2012, when the University of Arizona's Independent Review Board approved a study put forward by Dr. Sue Sisley and would have studied the use of cannabis as a tool in alleviating symptoms related to PTSD in veterans. To underscore the magnitude of this unfolding national tragedy, I want to highlight that the 16,000 suicides since late 2012 is 235% higher than the total number of U.S. service members this country has lost fighting the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The board cannot ignore the pragmatic realities that accompanied the termination of Dr. Sue Sisley. The research she was prepared to conduct will now be significantly delayed at best, and at worst will never take place. Given the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the issues as outlined above, given the national media interest and reports of political interference by Arizona legislatures at the highest level, to include the university's own lobbyists, and direct conversations that we know occurred between the aforementioned and the University of Arizona's presidents and Hart, there could be no question as to the appropriate step by the Regents. We request the Arizona Board of Regents authorize an independent review of all matters as it relates to the termination of Dr. Sue Sisley. To quote the board's own policy, Regents are charged to exercise control and supervision of each university in its pursuit of the solemn responsibility entrusted it for developing and maintaining a system of higher education that provides an opportunity for education of all persons, explores and expands the frontiers of knowledge, and serves to improve the quality of life for the people of the great state of Arizona. President Klein and fellow Regents, the proverbial ball is in your court. A transparent accounting of the circumstances surrounding this issue is of grave importance to the citizens of the great state of Arizona and this country's veterans, who risk life and limb to uphold the very ideals that seem to have been called into question here. To paraphrase a quote based on Dante's Inferno, the hottest place in hell is reserved for those who in time of moral crisis preserve their neutrality. This board has the power and moral imperative to act on this request without delay. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Sean Kernan. Since that board meeting, we would ask that this be expanded to all three universities. It is our understanding that all three universities have now rejected this study and has put this study in a precarious position. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. My name is Ricardo Pereda, R-I-C-A-R-D-O, Pereda, P-E-R-E-Y-D-A. I was in the United States Army Military Police Corps, and I served from 2003 to 2009, primarily overseas in the European theater, the Middle East, Iraq to be specific. I came home in 2005, and I was facing a difficult challenge transitioning from military to civilian life. I went through the gamut of the VA therapy programs and everything that they had to offer. It didn't work for me. Ultimately, in 2010, I began using medical marijuana. Since 2010, I've become a much more productive member of society. I've gone back to school, been heavily involved in my community, and obviously I'm here before you advocating on behalf of my brothers and sisters who are suffering still. Being an Arizona native, born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, I find it disturbing that my state will not step up and do the right thing. The fact that I'm here today before you, sharing my story and urging leaders in our state to do the right thing is absurd. I shouldn't have to be here. I shouldn't have to be trying to convince people to do the right thing. But again, unfortunately, here I am before you. As Sean mentioned, since the study got approved in 2012 through the Institutional Review Board at the University of Arizona, over 16,000 veterans had committed suicide. It's a travesty. It should not be happening. However, it is happening, and it's incumbent upon us to find out why it's happening. We need to be exploring every alternative out there to treat these men and women who have sacrificed so much for us and are the reason that we're able to live the life that we lead today. The comforts that we have, they are the reason we have them. So to not do everything that we can within our powers, within our capability, by just showing leadership, doing the right thing, it really sends a mixed signal, especially when you have people thanking veterans for their service, thanking them for everything that they do. But when they come back and they seek help and they ask for assistance, they get the cold shoulder and they get, their back turned on. This research is a prime example. You talk over here to some senators and they'll say that they supported legislation to get marijuana research approved at the universities so that they can conduct this study. Well, the study's still been waiting for years running. No research is currently slated to be conducted at the universities. I would ask them why that is. They'll also tout that they support our veterans, they support research, they're all for scientific freedom and academic knowledge and so on and so forth. Laundry list of offerings that they give. It's all for naught if there's no action behind it. It boils down to empty rhetoric is what it does. And I would like to see the university system within the state of Arizona step up and do the right thing, conduct this research that's not going to cost them anything. It's already paid for. It's privately funded. There's a research facility outside of the institution that the study is going to be housed in. And all that it will take from Arizona State University is to provide Dr. Sisley an academic appointment so that she can conduct this research and apply for an institutional review board process through Arizona State University. That's it. Straightforward, simple. But for some reason, it's taken them 5 months to decide on whether or not they want to do that, and whether or not they want to be the leaders that they say they are. I don't know. I'm not in their position. I don't understand, obviously, the stressors that they face. It could be political, it could be business, it could be whatever. It could be their own personal biases. But for whatever it is, they have a decision to make. And whether that decision is, going to be right or wrong, it's going to be judged by the hands of history. And Arizona has a very real decision to make on which side of the line they want to be on. They're either going to be on the side of academic freedom and knowledge and the betterment of our society, or they're going to be remembered as those people who were stuck in the dark ages, who didn't want to come out of their little bubbles and explore new thought, and explore new alternatives to very real complex situations. So with that being said, I thank you all for coming out here today. If you have any more questions, I would ask that you keep them until the end of the press conference. We'll be more than happy to answer them individually, on the record, off the record, what have you. Without any further ado, here's our next speaker. Thank you very much. Ricardo Pereda, Ricardo Pereyda.
Good morning, my name is Tony Ryan. Obvious spellings, T-O-N-Y-R-Y-A-N, 4-letter words. And I'm a retired law enforcement police officer in Denver, Colorado for 36 years, retiring as at the rank of lieutenant. And I was a street cop for 30 of those 36 years, in charge of street cops for 26 years as a supervisor and commander. And as a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, a group of police officers, judges, and prosecutors who have decided that the war on drugs is totally ineffective and makes a problem worse instead of better, I'm here to stand in favor of Arizona legalizing marijuana. We were very successful in getting that done in Colorado, and frankly, the world hasn't caved in because Colorado has legal marijuana now for people 21 years old above. So it's proof positive. It's not, the world's not going to go, nowhere in a handbasket, because some people are now allowed to partake in a drug that's far less of a problem than the legal drug in this country, alcohol, which is responsible for 50% of calls for police service. So I'm here fully to support this effort that's going to be taking place in the next couple of years to legalize marijuana in Arizona. and get realistic about how we deal with the problem that some people have with drugs, and how the current policy just makes the problem worse instead of better. So we stand and unfortunately hear more from us as we get through the next year or so, helping to change the current status of marijuana in particular and drugs in general to something that's effective and something that works on the problem that some people have with drugs. Thank you.
I'm State Senator Robert Mays. I represent District 30. Within my constituent base, I probably have more veterans than any other legislative district. I support the veterans 1,000%. All we're asking from the universities is for research and science to be implemented. Why this concept was given birth here in the state of Arizona, why do we have to leave the state of Arizona? Why does it have to go to private universities like Johns Hopkins or Rice or Yale or Harvard? Why can't the state universities move forward and implement this program? It's just research and science. That's number one. Secondly, it has been funded. It has been funded, and later on we will learn that later today. So as I was going to state, I will be brief. We need to move the agenda forward. Enough with mediocrity. Let's move the state forward. This state for the past 10 years has been moving in mediocrity, and it's time to get past that. Thank you very much.
Good morning. We were notified an hour ago from Phoenix City Councilman Sal Pacicio that he was not going to be able to be here today, but he has asked me to read this statement. Over 500,000 veterans live in Arizona. Many of those have served our country in combat zones overseas. Many of our veterans returning from combat zones are suffering from PTSD. Many of those cases go untreated or undertreated, sometimes with tragic consequences, including suicide. PTSD is not limited to service members. It can also affect our first responders. Phoenix was reminded of that recently with the tragic suicide of the Phoenix police officer Tiger. Everyone wants better treatment for those men and women who serve our country, state, and city. I don't know if cannabis will be an effective treatment. It's not known because it hasn't been studied. But I think we owe it to these men and women to look at everything from a scientific perspective and see what course of treatment is best. This study would not involve Arizona tax dollars, and all data produced would be open to public scrutiny, both the good and the bad. We shouldn't be afraid of science. Thank you.
I got something else to add there. One little tidbit about post-traumatic stress and science, and whether or not it works or whether or not it doesn't. The fact is that the Arizona Department of Health Services listed now, in January, post-traumatic stress is a qualifying condition under the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. They did so because there was evidence provided to them and to a judge that showed that it is effective for some people, and it provides a palliative effect, which addresses their symptoms. They keep trying, they being the powers that be, keep trying to put out that there's no science. There's nothing to prove whether or not this is an effective treatment. They say that comfortably because they're blocking the very science that they're saying they need. And unless we as a community stand up and say, no, enough is enough, let us conduct the science that you say you need so that the veterans who are coming back suffering from post-traumatic stress, who have been through a period of hell in their lives that none of you can comprehend, let their VA doctors, have the data so that they could recommend it. They don't need to prescribe it and have the VA give it to the veterans. But the very fact that these veterans can't get recommendations from their own primary care physicians and their primary care teams, they have to go outside of the VA to get this medicine, should show us that there's something wrong in our system. So there's obviously a lot of other issues, underlying issues that go along with this whole research grant and the listing of post-traumatic stress under qualifying conditions and so on and so forth. But it starts very basically at conducting the research that we need in order to definitively say whether or not this is an effective form of treatment. So thank you very much. Again, if you have any questions, we will be here to speak.
We have a few more seconds.
How are you? I'm going to read a statement prepared by Mel McDonald, the former U.S. State's attorney for the District of Arizona and former Superior Court judge and a strong supporter of medical marijuana. I regret that I could not attend the press conference scheduled for today at the state capitol. I had other conflicts that prevented me from attending. During my lifetime, our nation has engaged in combat during World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Just this past month, I was honored to meet some 15 recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor at a convention in Dallas, Texas, where I was coincidentally attending another event. Their stories were stories not only of heroism, but also indescribable trauma. PTSD is one of the great casualties of war. Some of our bravest and brightest suffer post-traumatic stress as a result of horrific battles that have robbed them of peace of mind. Treatment of these heroes through the use of cannabis has been documented in studies as highly beneficial to those suffering from this dreaded disorder. Arizona has one of the great doctor scientists with unique training in the scientific study of cannabis, Dr. Sue Sicily. I find it inconceivable that institutions of higher learning like Arizona State University or the University of Arizona would slam their doors shut and not embrace such a study. I could understand such an attitude if we were living in the dark ages, but we are living in the age of enlightenment and look to our universities to be at the cutting edge of scientific studies that improve the quality of life of our veterans. I urge our universities to approve the studies. Let's find out to what extent cannabis can benefit our veterans. Are those fighting the study afraid of what the results will yield? I hope that legislative and university leaders work together to support this study. It is a way of saying thank you to our courageous veterans and fulfilling our commitment to them to do everything within our power to restore to them the quality of life that they enjoyed before combat left them with this traumatized mind and soul. Thanks.
Ask for questions.
Does anyone have any questions? A couple things I'd like to say. I think we'll expect, if historical pattern holds true, we'll have the universities come out and get statements. I think it's really important to put out there that, while they fiddle, Rome's burning. We're having, I think ASU's had this for 5 months. You have almost close to 4,000 suicides in that time period. How long do we have to wait? I'll leave it at that. Any questions? Perfect.
Hi, does anyone have any questions? Any further questions that we can address? Sure.
Just last or recently, Bill Montgomery said he's challenging state. Are you guys at all concerned about how that might impact it?
Right. At this time, no, until we see further movement. He is moving forward, but we do know. Yeah.
Senator, are there any?
Go ahead.
Are there any legislative initiatives that are addressing this particular issue?
Well, we tried to move the agenda last year, but the agenda was squashed here at the Senate and the House. So, but nothing that I know of so far.
Again, we're trying to legalize cannabis in 2016. Safe Arizona Marijuana Policy Project. We're working on an initiative right now.
Have you spoken to the governor-elect about any of this?
I personally have, yes.
What is the conversation with him?
The conversation was this agenda is going to probably be moving forward and be well aware of it and be open to it.
What was his opinion on the subject?
He had no comment.
There was notoriously one lawmaker very outspoken about holding this up. Do you know, does she hold the same position as she did last year, or is she going to try to block the same efforts this year?
I think what's going to happen in this situation, we're going directly to the universities. And once it's implemented at the universities, the legislative body cannot block it. The Board of Regents gave that information to us. Once it's housed at ASU, the Board of Regents cannot do anything to block that research from moving forward. Good question.
And can you just state for the record again, you guys mentioned it's privately funded, is that
So it is privately funded. It was funded $2 million, and later today that'll be released. I don't have that, but I do know that it will be released later today. Resnick, anything?
I'll talk to him.
Okay, cool.
One thing I've heard talking to many legislators is that they're secretly supportive and okay with it, but they're not going to come public. what can the public in Arizona, the public at large, what can veterans do to support, give the backbone to many of these legislators to come forward? I mean, you're one of the few, and I respect that, and thank you very much, who can come out and say, you know what, this is necessary, let's do the research.
The majority of legislators, both in the House and Senate, Republican and Democrat, Libertarian, Vegetarian, all support it. They pretty much support it. What's happening, though, is people are living in fear of the word marijuana. You can take oxycodone or Oxycontin, but people fear the word marijuana. I think if veterans show their support behind their legislators who they represent, you would get more movement moving forward. Like I said, what I'm concerned about is this is given birth in Arizona. Why does it have to go to a private elite university throughout the country? Why not make movement, be the innovators here in Arizona to change the country, to change the world, which I do not understand. We're the epicenter of where it all started.
And this is research only.
Research only.
Right.
I understand that you recently met with ASU President Crow. Can you tell us what the conversation was?
The meeting was about 13 weeks ago with Crow, and who was in the meeting was Senator-elect Catherine Medon in support, and State Representative Debbie McHugh Davis. We stated to President Crow that this agenda we felt would fit best with ASU, and he agreed. He believed in science and research. Since then, there has been little movement on behalf of Arizona State University. So we have been in contact with them. We have been trying to move that agenda very quickly to expedite it, but so far there has been no movement.
So just to clarify, there will be no cost to the state of Arizona because it's fully funded, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so
No cost to Arizona.
And Arizona State privately said, President Crow said he would support this, correct?
Yes,
And yet there's been no movement.
there has been no movement.
How long, it's been since you're 13 weeks, how long do you know does it take to have an academic appointment at a university in the state of Arizona?
An academic appointment can happen within 24 hours.
Do you have any clue of what the holdup is?
Fear.
Okay.
From
Fear
Crow-
of the unknown.
Fear from Crow of the regions?
No fear from the regions. I just think fear of people don't know how to grab their hands around the whole system and figure it out.
Is there anything we can do as citizens to help urge them?
To move it
Write
forward,
letters,
I think this
call.
press conference is the best thing that's happened so far. I think it's brilliantly done, sort of genius to have all of you here in support of it and to tell the public. If it was brought to ballot, this agenda, it would pass in the state of Arizona. So we're just speaking on behalf of our constituents. That's what we're doing. We're being the leaders, and that's what Arizona needs right now. Any other questions?
Are these private donations that are covered?
A combination of private and grant money.
Did the grant money expire at a certain point? Like, do you have to get the research done by X date?
That is a great question. I do not have that answer. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Anyone who spoke is going to be available for any individual interviews you want to, or questions, ask questions. So feel free to grab people as you see fit.